Welcome back to the Critic-Verse. Today we're going to be doing a breakdown and review for Wolfpack Season 1, Episode 2, titled Two Bitten, Two Born, referencing all our main wolves. Another banger episode after last week's premiere. Can't wait to talk about it, but first, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Now, let's get to the episode. We start off with a direct continuation from last week, with the pack, mainly Blake, stuck in disbelief. Then Blake in denial takes off, with Everett in tow, Luna following him, and Harlan reluctantly following Luna. They bump into the search and rescue team, where the park ranger that works with Garrett is, and identifies the twins, and asks them why they're still in the forest, and why are there two other teenagers with them. Now we learn that although the twins go to the same school as Everett and Blake, they are in a grade above them, the twins being seniors and Everett and Blake being juniors. On the car ride home, Harlan doesn't want to talk to Everett or Blake, nor does it seem like he believes them, but Luna seems the most interested and wants to know if they were bitten. Everett goes to show her his bite, which is now completely healed, and even he can't see the venom that he used to see on the mark. They drop Everett off first, and his place is relatively huge for a one-family home. Seems like his family is doing pretty well. Everett's parents were waiting for him, and he doesn't get the warmest welcome from his mother, but his father tells him that they'll talk about it in the morning. Blake admires her face in the bathroom mirror and gets surprised when she sees a vision of her wolf teeth. Then after a shower, gets a similar mysterious phone call to the one that Everett has been getting. The twins arrive home and are further questioned by their father's coworker, and after she is continually stonewalled, she gives them an update on the search efforts on where Garrett might be. She then suggests where he may be going for higher ground, to where there are more rocks and less things to burn due to his park ranger training. After she leaves, Harlan tells Luna to put Everett and Blake out of her mind, as he doesn't trust them and doesn't want to share their secrets with them, but Luna states that now it's their secrets too. Everett tries to get some sleep, but his anxiety is getting the better of him, tossing and turning and then reshuffling his desk just to clear his mind and put himself at ease. Interconnected with a shot of Blake trying to sleep in her motel room, Everett closes his eyes and reopens them, glowing like a wolf, like when he was in the woods with the others, and the same thing happens to Blake as she falls asleep. We then get a time lapse of Everett and Blake sleeping all through the next day, while the twins are at home listening to hear any news on Garrett. Blake and Everett seem to be dreaming about one another, as if they are each laying right next to the other in their respective beds. This dream spooks Blake, and she wakes up thinking about the phone call, then barricades the door, which wakes up her brother, who notes that Blake is afraid. Once again, we are shown Garrett traversing the blazing forest, trying to find a high spot to let off a signal flare. Due to a lack of oxygen, he starts to get delusional and brandishes his weapon as he hears the heavy growling and stomps of a beast. As the sun rises, Everett wakes up to the words of the mysterious phone call replaying in his head. It can't move as easily in the daylight, but it will move. It will come for you. It has to kill you before the next full moon. And finds himself under his bed, with marks on his hands from clenching his fists so hard he broke skin. His mother attempts to enter his room, only to find that he has also barricaded his door. After moving his desk out of the way, his mother tries to smooth over her reaction to him the other night, and tells Everett the police and the investigator are downstairs, and to get dressed so he can go and talk to them. Blake wakes up to her younger brother watching the news, and their dad walks in on the phone with the insurance company, going over the damages and how after missed payments has invalidated his policy, so they have no insurance money. He then addresses the barricade, to which Blake uses her brother as an excuse, and after, her father wants to move it back, to which he notes that something is different with Blake, and Danny calls out her skin, to which she claims that she has a new treatment which was working, but her dad didn't notice. Danny even says Blake's pretty now, which kind of insults Blake, and then her dad says she was always pretty. Everett comes downstairs, first greeted by his father and the asshole cop from the hospital, then by the investigator, Kristen Ramsey. At first he is hesitant to shake her hand, but she tells him that shaking her hand isn't an admission of guilt, to which his dad says, "Everett, shake the woman's hand, she knows you're not guilty." He hesitates still, but then he shakes her hand. I thought it was because his hand still had bruises from the earlier scene. Everett's parents excuse themselves to the other room, which I thought was weird because I thought the parents had to be present if a minor was being questioned. They do the whole good cop, bad cop routine on Everett, with the asshole cop being the bad cop and Kristen being the good cop, because Officer Jang tells Everett not to lie because he doesn't look like a liar, which I would think is more of a compliment to most people, but I guess it's a scare tactic for him. Everett then gives them an outline of what happened after he left the hospital, because they'd obviously think he was crazy or definitely think he's lying if he told them the entire truth of where he went afterwards. Surprisingly, Officer Jang still doesn't believe him, even though everything he said was totally plausible. The only thing that sounds a little far-fetched was a teenage girl not having a cell phone or social media. Then, from the investigator, we get the names of all the other potential suspects from the bus, which, if you see my last video, was every character that had a speaking role on that bus. Austin Kirk, Phoebe Caldwell, Tia Patterson, and Connor Ryan, the kid with the crutches, who we'll get back to later. Why they believe that the arsonist was on the bus is because arsonists like to watch their work, and because of a psychological study that most arsonists set their first fires before 18. Everett is listed as a suspect because he doesn't have many friends at school, noting an antisocial behavior. In the next scene, Luna tells Harlan she's going back out to look for Garrett. Harlan tells her not to because she can't walk through fire and that she should wait, like their dad's co-worker suggested. Harlan also warns her that in looking for one father, she might find the other one, and that tonight is a full moon, so he may even be more powerful than before. He then swipes the keys to the truck before she can, picks up a gym bag, and says he's going to distract himself. Everett is doing an assignment at his home with Connor, one of the kids from the bus, and another potential suspect, which Connor notes that they don't have much time because he's going to the hospital to take his cast off and to also get a tetanus shot because he was bitten during the bus accident by what he thinks was a coyote. Just the mention of being bitten during the bus incident concerns Everett, and he asks to see the bite, and after Connor removes his shirt, we see that Connor's bite hasn't even healed, and that his bite looks like a dog bite, to which Connor says, "Like a coyote," and Everett reluctantly agrees. He then proceeds to ask Connor if he's gotten any mysterious phone calls, to which Connor says no. Everett does ask Connor to tell him what his doctor says. When Connor asks about his cast, Everett tells him no about his bite, to which Everett's tremor starts to flare up, and Connor wonders if Everett was bitten, but Everett denies it. We're then shown Harlan at the gym, checking out a guy in between reps, when suddenly his hearing starts to flare up and everything sounds louder than it is. He then starts to go for bigger weights and runs into the same guy he was checking out. The guy asks if he wants to share since they are working out the same areas. Harlan declines awkwardly. Suddenly, his lycanthropy is affecting his game. He then catches a news report on the fires at the gym, so it seems this wasn't the best distraction for him at all. Back in the forest, Garrett is trying his best to survive. He stumbles and starts to puke and passes out. We then get another flashback of Garrett bringing the pups home, telling someone on the phone about them. We then see a paw touch his hand, and as he looks up, his face begins to change, only to look back down and see the hand of a human baby. This then gives him the strength to get up and keep pushing forward. We then transition from Garrett to Blake in a runner's starting position, trying to test her speed like the other night while her brother monitors. She runs around the motel, I assume, and once she makes it all the way around, she collapses, and Danny says she's not fast. To which she notes she was the other night, and Danny jokes, "Not now." Then, Investigator Ramsey arrives and says she needs to lengthen her stride, and asks what she's training for, the track team or running from something else. Both notice that Danny is visibly uncomfortable, and Blake shakes her hand, probably just to get this over with. Seems like I was wrong about Harlan's lycanthropy affecting his game, because he is shown getting hot and heavy with the guy he was previously checking out, only to be hit with a fake out because Harlan was just imagining it, and it breaks his concentration, which causes a scene and everyone stares at him. He apologizes and goes to bench press, but without a spotter. Now, I only bring up the fact that he doesn't have a spotter because he seems to be losing focus a lot, and bench pressing without a spotter and a lack of focus can be a dangerous thing. We then see that as Harlan loses all focus when he sees a reflection of his teeth, all wolf-like, but luckily his gym crush comes to his rescue. Then his gym crush recognizes him, probably because they go to the same school, but Harlan still freaks out and takes off. Connor is then shown at the hospital, and his doctor expresses his disappointment at the progress of his leg, to which he has to spend more time in the cast, and notes he did have to run on a broken leg during the bus incident. The doctor starts to administer his tetanus shot, but Connor reacts in pain to the shot and then collapses screaming. There is a loud knock at Blake's motel room, which upsets Danny. Blake opens it quickly, and it's Everett. He asks her if she feels the full moon, and Blake pulls him inside quickly. The moon then rises into the night sky, and we see Luna crouched in the fetal position on the kitchen floor. Feeling the effects of the full moon, texting Harlan asking where he is, she starts to feel a presence circling the house, and all of a sudden, a horse breaks through the front door, and Luna roars at it, teeth and all, but it turns out to be just a hallucination. She then gets a text from Harlan saying they found Garrett. Garrett is then shown clinging to life with his flare ignited in hand. Then, through the smoke above him, he sees glowing eyes and a low rumble growl. He starts to fan the flare in front of him to ward off the beast, but in a moment of clarity, he realizes it's the rescue copter, raises his hand to signal his location and that he's alive. Back at the hospital, Connor's doctor speaking to his mother, telling her about his response to the shot, but the doctor seems puzzled how he's even still upright after all the pain meds and the very strong sedative they gave him. Blake gets water for her and Everett from the vending machine outside, then returns to her room to see Everett and Danny bonding, to which she notes Danny doesn't really talk to strangers or touch them, which creates a really tender moment between the two. Back in Connor's hospital room, he gets a phone call, and it's the same mysterious person that's been calling Blake and Everett. Seriously, how is he getting their numbers? He asks Connor, why isn't he running? You're going to have to run. They took your crutches, didn't they? They don't want you going anywhere. "Look out the door, Connor. They're going to sedate you again, even restrain you this time. If they do that, you're never gonna survive. It can smell your blood. It can follow your scent for miles. Run, Connor, run, or you're gonna die." Connor grabs his clothes and sneaks away from his hospital room. Everett tells Blake they need to talk to the twins, to which Blake responds they don't care about them. But Everett notes they know what they're going through. Everett describes what he feels like, but it's a good feeling, and asks Blake if she feels the same. Everett then starts to fawn over Blake and once again puts his foot in his mouth, trying to express his feelings to her. She thinks it's because of her now clear skin, but he says it's more than that, and he leans in for a kiss, but gets a phone call from Connor interrupting. Connor is heard whispering on the phone, and when Everett asks why he is whispering, he says it's because there's something here with him. Everett asks what's his location. He says 3rd floor hiding, but I think it knows where I am. Everett puts his phone on speaker so Blake can hear. Then, Connor and Everett both agree that it wasn't a coyote or a mountain lion that bit him, and that is trying to find him and kill him. Blake's dad is then seen calling for her, but she says she'll be right back, and they both leave to go and find Connor. Back at the hospital, Connor is sneaking around, and all the while hearing something big following him. As he gets to the stairwell, the doors burst open, but he makes his way down the stairs, limping in pain. Just then, the beast breaks through right before he gets outside. Connor makes his way out of the backside of the hospital and tries to crawl through a break in the fence, only for his cat to get caught on the fence, and in a panic to survive, he starts to tear at his cast, and even more desperate, takes a big rock and starts hitting his leg to get it out of the cast. Once out of the cast, he tries to crawl, only to see that the beast is already there. Connor screams as the beast comes right at him. Briggs is then brought into the hospital, Luna clutching his hand till Officer Jang stops the twins, calling them Harlan and Elizabeth, saying they need to ask them questions. Everett is then shown at the backside of the hospital. He finds Connor's cast, but no Connor. Right then, a cop car pulls up on him, and out steps the investigator, with Blake in the back seat, saying she has a few more questions for him. But he might also have some questions himself, since he's holding Connor's cast. Right then, the episode ends. Okay, guys, like I said, another banger episode. Really feels like things are starting to ramp up now that Garrett has been found. Harlan and Luna have no choice but to focus on Blake and Everett and this pack situation. Again, the episode is titled Two Bitten, Two Born, which is referencing Blake and Everett as the bitten and the twins as the born. Couple interesting things to note in this episode. Everett is the only member of the pack that doesn't display his fangs in this episode. Connor believes at first it was a coyote that bit him, and fun fact about coyotes and wolves, they're both known to gnaw off their own legs to get out of a trap, and when Connor was trapped, he was willing to break his own leg just to get away. As I mentioned earlier in the breakdown, we get a name to put to the faces of every character that spoke on the bus as a potential suspect. And once again, hearing the voice on the phone, it still sounds like actor Ian Bohen from Teen Wolf, but it doesn't list him in the credits as far as I know, or on his IMDb. A theory that I talked with for someone on the show's Reddit is that the mysterious phone caller seems to be trying to get each one of the kids alone to make it easier for the beast to pick them off, which I kind of agreed with, and I thought that was something interesting to note. Another piece of lore in this episode is that the bite isn't a guarantee that you will turn. Connor was bitten and the bite didn't heal. But in Teen Wolf, if the bite doesn't turn you, it kills you. Luckily in this show, the bite doesn't kill you, but the beast definitely will. But it does seem like Connor had a violent, painful reaction when getting the tetanus shot because of the bite, and sedatives didn't really affect him either afterwards. During last week's breakdown and review, I theorized Blake's no phone issue could have been due to her insecurities with her skin, and I believe this episode further proves that, because you could say she just couldn't afford a phone, but in the episode, Danny has an iPad or a tablet, and those things aren't cheap, showing that money isn't really the issue on why she doesn't have a phone or social media. I've heard some people say Blake and Everett are progressing really fast as a ship. I don't really care. I like them together. Hope they last, because in teen shows, high school romances don't last for long. Everett seems to think that the twins have the answers, but to me, it seems like they're just as in the dark. They might know a little bit more than Everett and Blake, but it seems like when it was just the two of them, they had just above average abilities. But with more members of the pack, their abilities have amplified exponentially. So they don't know as much as they think. Okay guys, that's all I've got for today. Like, comment, and subscribe for more. Hope to see you next week on the Critic-Verse.